Greetings, everyone. This is Virtuous Roots, where we reclaim virtue to bring into our home and yours. I'm Thomas McCuddy.
I'm Thomas Quackenbush.
And I'm Stacy McCuddy.
We are again joined by my lovely wife, and it is a pleasure to have her in studio as we're continuing kind of in a theme talking about. We've been talking about a little bit about parenting and sanctification. We've talked about growing up godly men and women, and you can again find any of our previous episodes on our podcast on the streaming platforms. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the value of family traditions that, and this is more than just weird things that families do, because I think we all have things that are peculiar to our family, but the value of purposefully choosing and developing these family traditions that have meaning. And we're going to start out with the scripture with this that'll kind of orient us. This is from Exodus chapter 12, starting verse 24. Moses is talking to the people. He says, "You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and your sons forever. And when you come into the land that the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, 'What do you mean by this service?' you shall say, 'It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses.'" Now, this passage, again, this is uh, specifically putting into it that these traditions are there. One of the reasons for these traditions, for the Passover, is to teach the children. It's to help bring the remembrance. It's to help, in this case, we know this is the Passover meal. We know that for us, we celebrate Easter, and we have all these different traditions in church for the purposes of remembering, for purposes of teaching people. So we want to think about this in our family, what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. What kind of traditions do we have in our families that have been this purposeful thing for the purposes of teaching our children?
Hmm.
So I think that with our family, one of the things that we've started doing, and we've done this as a church. We've been reading. We've been actually, as our church, we've been preaching the Psalms. Nick and I have been sharing this, and part of what we've done is try to get our church members reading the scripture together as a family. So it's not so much a tradition, but maybe it starts that way because I know in our family, we've made it a habit. We've made it this thing where we've come together, we're reading the Psalms in the morning, and it's really quick. We come together, we read the Psalms, and then we pray for one another. And the way we do it, since we have the three boys, we find out, okay, how can we pray for each person? And then we go around the room, and the person next to, like if I'm sitting next to Stacy, I pray for Stacy, and if Stacy's next to one child, she'll pray for him, and it goes all the way around. And it's a simple thing, but it develops that habit, develops that kind of tradition that I know we've started this year, but it's the kind of thing that if we keep doing this and this becomes part of our family ritual, it almost becomes a thing like, why are we doing this every morning? Because we're focusing on the word, because we're reading together as a family, because we're preparing for the day. There's reasons. And we're also learning the word together. We need to pray for each other,
Mhm.
to have brothers praying for each other, especially when they might be not on best terms because of something that happened. This allows us to instill in our kids these chants for these traditions to figure out what it is and why we do it. So what is maybe let's go this route. What are some of the things maybe you had in your family as those kinds of traditions as you were growing up?
It's kinda hard for me, 'cause, this is, like, for my wife and I both, like, when we grew up, I grew up in the '80s, and it seemed like when I was growing up, it was kind of like, kind of left to ourselves a lot, and,
Hmm.
I think things have changed in some ways. It went a complete other direction, um, and so coming into parenthood, and there was, like, the basic holidays and other things like that that, brought our family together. Um, in some ways, there's things that happened in our family that kind of split that up and kind of just kind of demolished those traditions in my eyes as a kid, and and then growing up, and I felt like, and I think like this idea of having these traditions is not just like, just it's something that it's necessary. It's something like the years come around, otherwise they just kind of drag on. And like having something that we're, because I think when you're with your children, when they start getting involved and wanting to do that thing, and they recognize the tradition, like say, for instance, like because for me, I kind of had an event. We had it was an open canvas for like how we're gonna, you know, how our family is gonna operate, and so we had to establish brand new traditions.
Mm.
Mm.
And like so, like we'll start off something like, let's do game night, get everybody together and get a board game, and just every one of our kids gets to choose a different game each time, but something that we can all come around and all engage in, and so that we can spend that time together and goof off with each other and have a good time, and have that intentional time where we're not like distracted in our many different areas. So like, I mean, going, just starting something where we're getting together, and like something like eating dinner. Like when I was a kid, just like we took your dinner wherever you wanted to eat it. It's in your room, in front of the TV, whatever. We didn't have that tradition of sitting at a table, and I find that that is important. Like there's something about that time, and also we talked earlier, like previous episodes, about setting boundaries, because these traditions should have some sort of like sanctifying aspect, where we recognize when we're doing this tradition, we're going to cease doing other things. And we're going to focus our attention on this for this period of time. It's not about you, it's about the family. It's not about just what you want to do, it's about us coming together. And I think eating around a table is a good tradition. I mean, simple, for at least dinner, and having everybody sit there and having some sort of decorum, where it's not just everybody just, we sit and we pray before our meal, and we go talk about our day one by one, and kind of give something like, what do you feel that that has blessed you today? What good things have God done for you today, or something like that, giving them reflecting back on their day and seeing God in their,
I think that's where some families are like, well, just sitting down for dinner is what we do. But I was the same way growing up. Like we never did.
Yep.
It was maybe Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yep.
I would remember we would all sit down together as a family, but otherwise, I was eating in front of the TV or
Mhm.
I was sitting there doing my homework. We didn't have that.
Yep.
And so tradition doesn't have to be something that's, weighty and solemn like, the Passover feast. It's those kinds of things that you instill in the life of your family. And why do we do these things? Why do we sit down together as a dinner? Because we're family. Why do we wait to eat? Because we respect each other. There's that builds into these lessons, instilling those habits. That's what virtue is. So I don't want to minimize, and people think, oh, well, our traditions aren't spectacular. They don't have to be. That much of life is not spectacular. It just needs to be good.
Yep.
So, what were some of the traditions you had growing up?
Growing up,
Mm.
um, I think a lot of for us was about holidays. I mean, mostly that's where my mind goes, but we did have, the tradition of family meals, when we could. My dad actually wasn't home in the evenings, um, my childhood, just because of the shift that he worked.
Hmm.
But I remember, lots of other, family meals and things outside of that, birthdays and those kinds of things. Um, but as far as like kind of those ordinary traditions, I don't know that there's a whole lot that kind of stands out for me, but I'm kind of like you, Thomas. I'm like, I want new traditions for my
Yep.
family, and I want things that are important to us, and you know, building a specific family culture where even our boys will say like McCuddies do
Yep.
this, or one we don't say a whole lot, but is definitely a culture in our home, is that McCuddies are readers. Like, we don't force our kids to read, but we have intentionally created that reading culture in our home. And so, like what you were talking about, when we sit down to family meals, usually one of the boys will be the first ones to say, "What did you read today?"
Yep.
And that initiates the conversation at the dinner table. And
Well, actually,
again,
one of them he'll be like, "Today I read," and he just wants because he won't even ask. He'll just launch right into it.
well, it still initiates, but that is I don't want to misquote the study or attribute it to the wrong person, but there is a study that we talk about how like maybe 75 to 80% of kids that grew up in the church leave the church as adults.
Hmm.
But there's been a study that found that, one of the things they interviewed those 20% that did stay in the church, and one of the things that was in common between all of them was family dinners. I think even I don't remember, it was a small number. It wasn't even like every night, but it was, consistent family dinners in the evening was a huge contributing factor to those kids, um, you know, keeping their faith into college and adulthood, because they had that tradition and
Hmm.
because it was that family culture. And I think it's not about the food, it's about, like you said, it's about the time spent
Yeah.
together, and it's about opening up the conversation between everyone instead of we're just all doing our own independent things. And so I don't we definitely need to um, value those kinds of very simple traditions that we build our family around, and um, establishing, like you said, that culture. We do game night as well, and I think it can be, really simple things. I know a lot of families, have, family fun Friday, or, whatever they wanna
Get
call it. Like
up a
Friday,
platter,
we
ice
know
cream.
on Friday nights,
Hmm.
that's family time, and you protect that time. And for us, it has always been very intentional for me to protect our family dinner time.
Yep.
Like, we don't do sports in the evenings. We don't, you know, do other activities outside of the house. I don't go to the grocery store in the evenings, or, go run errands in the evenings like that. If that time is protected, and it's very important to me that we are all there at home in the evenings eating that meal together. Now, obviously there's, exceptions to that. But if you have that mindset that this is the culture of our family and this is that tradition that we want to make important, then you protect that time as much as you are. And then obviously,
Well,
things come up.
and that's true for any endeavor. Like if you want to be successful in any part of life, like I like to run, and like you begin. It's not like a lot of people don't run because it's terrible. Like they feel it's terrible. Like feel like getting out of breath. My heart's racing. I'm sweaty. This is hard. But the more you do it, the more you're setting aside that time. I think it's like that key is prioritizing that time and putting, like we do that all the time with our phones and all of our work, but when it comes to things like our family, those things are not prioritized in that way. Like, so what running, like after a while you get used to it, and then all of a sudden you've now made it a habit, and now you desire it. And
Right.
like it's like you go from it's a hassle at first, even getting together, having all your kids, because if you don't have this habit, and even sometimes with my kids, they don't feel like being out there, and they're all like slump, they're grumpy, and they don't want, and then you have to start initiating conversation, and they pep up, and then they're back to themselves. But um it's that intention. It's just it's one of those things, is that we have to prioritize if we want to establish traditions in our home that are going to bring our kids up to be godly like men, young adults. um we have to do those things even when we don't feel like it. That's, I think, other part of it. Like it's, there's days where I'm sure, like, you don't feel like cooking a whole meal. Like you just, you had a long day, you had all these things going on. Now I have to cook this meal, and I have to, get the kids together. They're all like, and you just, the easiest thing is just to order out and just like, just let everybody go their way, their own way. But we have to, like, that's the discipline, that's that fortitude that we had to bring in if we want to establish a tradition. Like, we don't have God's miraculous power where he can just like part the sea and be like, yeah, keep this tradition. We're like, well, we have to establish kind of from, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to bring our family together. And the only way to do that sometimes is to break some of those vices, or at least kind of go up against those vices of trying to be lazy and not wanting to continue with it.
Well, I think in that issue of like even just as we're talking about the tradition of the meals, that there's those times that yeah, it's too late to cook, those kinds of things, and then you get the meal, but then we sit down and we eat it, whether it's a pizza or
Yep.
whatever it is. We don't just grab our food and scatter. Like I just don't think we've done that. I don't like It's not something I've even thought about in myself, that in my life growing up, it was so odd to be there with the family eating together. But in our family, that is the norm. Like, I can't imagine, like, if they got up and they tried to take their food somewhere else, I'd be like, you have lost your mind. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I would never consider that. So I think that's, again, some of the value of the traditions in the family. And as we're reading, like with Exodus, and we know this is what history has kind of shown, that the Jewish culture, we look at them and we look at their traditions, we look how they have maintained the Jewish identity no matter where they were in the world during the whole diaspora, as they, for millennia, didn't even have a central country of their own. The Jews have managed to have this culture, these traditions. It's maintained identity, values, all of these things. And I think that displays some of the power behind the family traditions, that as we do these things, we're able to remember why. We remember where we come from. We remember what we value, where we're going. So that's why the traditions don't have to be these grandiose things, but it's a passing on to the kids. This is what we see in Exodus. There were other passages I was looking at. This is what goes on in Joshua, where he sets up the pillars, and the kids are like, "What are these pillars about?" And Joshua's like, "Remember what happened.
Mhm.
Remember what this is." And even in my house, we have the kinds of things where, and I don't know if I can call them souvenirs, but sometimes we get the souvenirs to remember where we've gone.
Hmm.
We have those kinds of things to remember who we are, what we value. So I think in shifting the thought with this, because we talk about what we've done for families that maybe don't have these traditions, who maybe I think this is what happens sometimes, that families sit around and look around, it's like, oh, we don't have these traditions. We have just sort of been surviving, doing whatever. And what are some advice? What's some ways, or maybe are there traditions that we want in our homes that aren't there yet? How would we go about getting those? That as we look at developing those family traditions, because there's a right way, there's a wrong way to do it. I think TV shows are really good about portraying the wrong way.
Hmm.
You see the mom who's like, "Oh, I want to like have our family together," but the family has never actually been together, and she wants to bring them all. I mean, that's movies, TV shows are
Every
filled with this.
Hallmark movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
trope.
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's very much because the kids are like, "Why are we doing it? We've never done this before." So you can't just sort of jump all in.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that we can cultivate and develop those traditions in our home? What are some easy ways to start, or even some things in your own homes that you're like, "Hey, here's what I'm looking to do," and the way we would go about it?
Well, and I think the reason why we kind of went to the dinner thing is because that's something, because everybody's gonna want to eat, and
Everybody's got to eat.
if you're the one providing the food, and you get to dictate where it's presented, and you're the one that made it, you're the one that bought it, and kind of telling your kids, I'm like, well, we're gonna eat it here, we're gonna eat it together. And even though it's not something we normally do, I think this, like, you got to be honest too. You're like, I want to have, like, you guys, like, say if your kids are growing older, like, I want to have these times, like, where we sat around and had these conversations. I want you to, like, establish this with your family in the future. Like, and when you have a family, we can go have dinner with you, and pass this tradition along and have this time together. I think it just doing stuff like that, just, it doesn't have to be like crazy. You don't have to go and figure something out, and you
Doesn't
know
have to be a
yeah,
candlelit dinner with
you
flowers
don't have
and
yeah, you don't have
tablecloths and
you don't have
yeah,
to go crazy. It's just like just starting something like that.
right.
I think food is easy one because everybody wants to eat. So
And I think you start small. You can have a goal of, okay, one time this week,
yep,
we're gonna sit down and have dinner as a family. And then you try that for a little while, and then maybe you build up to twice a week or 3 times a week, and the more you do it, then the easier it is,
yeah,
and then you'll find yourself doing it every night. But, when you asked the question, one thing I thought about is that as far as, like, building traditions in our family, that has always been a goal for me, and I think it's a little bit easier now that our kids are a little bit older, is being able to serve together as a family. And I think a
hmm,
great way that you have initiated that is, like, on Sunday mornings, you'll take a couple of the boys and get here early and clean the church and just have them have that attitude of, okay, this is a job that needs to be done. This is a small act that we can do to, and, it's not necessarily my responsibility. I'm not getting paid to do it, but it's the right thing to do to take care of the church and to serve God and to serve the church
Yeah.
family in that way. And so then I think we can build off of that into maybe larger service projects that we do as a whole family. So that's been kind of a goal that I would love to see our family develop, is to be able to have those times of service together.
Mhm.
And I know a lot we have some friends that, instead of like spending money on Christmas presents and a big trip, or, huge things, to focus on their family, they'll take that same money that they would have spent on gifts or travel or whatever, and they go on a mission trip for Christmas instead of, buying each other presents. So then that turns into their Christmas tradition. We're not inwardly focused on just our family and getting what we want for Christmas, but now our family tradition is we're going to go on a mission trip
And
every
I would
Christmas.
say
And I think that's such a cool idea.
that's more rewarding, especially for a family that, like, the only time of year, like, they use the vacation as the excuse of, "This is the time we're gonna do something." I see this all the time, like, "We're on vacation, let's do stuff as a family." Well, they haven't done anything with each other all year round,
Right.
and, like, like, they don't even know how to, like, it's almost like they have to get to know each other before you even get to have the vacation, and those vacations, like, everything's money, and, like, the mission trip is a way, because Thomas and I, obviously, we've been to South Africa. It's a different environment for us. Like, we love it, and, like, I think it's so much more rewarding for, if we brought our, like, both Thomas and I would, it'd be great to bring our wives over and our children so they can experience this too, because it's not just like, you're going to have somebody serve you, but you're going to serve, and you're getting, you get to experience something really, really, like, life changing as a family, and I think that's incredible,
Mhm.
'cause it can't not change your life, like, that's what mission trips do. I mean, you're helping the person you're on mission, like, the group of people or whatever, but you're also, they're ministering to you too, and it's just, I think it's great for families, and I know a lot of missionary families that are really, really close because
Yeah.
of that.
So I want to offer a word of encouragement too, because we talk about things like as we're sitting down daily eating and these things that happen regularly. In our family, we have a yearly tradition, and we actually, some traditions they don't have to be, uh, you don't have to come up with them on your own. That our family we face a unique challenge over the years. I moved away from home
Mhm.
many years ago, but I've always gone back twice a year. It's a long drive for us, takes about 12 hours on the road to get home, so we don't do it often, but we always go at Christmas. So we've only spent in 24 years like two Christmases at home. So when we talk about family traditions, it becomes difficult because we're on the road and we're subject to my parents or her parents, like in terms of their rhythms and things. So before we leave, we had learned about this Icelandic tradition, Jólabókaflóð, if I got that right, and it just means Yule Book Flood, because we are a family of readers. And so before we leave, we do this on the Sunday night
Mm.
before we leave for our Christmas, going back home to see family. We sit around and we end up giving each other books for Christmas. Like we would try to buy different kinds for the kids. Stacy and I give each other books or book paraphernalia many times. And our boys look forward to this, like, and they can even tell you, like, they can go to their shelves. I got this for Yola Boca Flawed, and I mean, I can too. Like we know what those are,
Mhm.
and they just look so much forward to getting these books. And then you get chocolate. We get special chocolate every year, and we just sit around and drink tea, eat chocolate, and we don't have well, we do actually have a fireplace, but no fire goes in the fireplace. So we have an app on the TV.
Yeah,
We make
a
our
Yule
TV
log.
a fireplace, and the whole purpose again is because we just kind of set this atmosphere. It's one night a year, but as we're getting closer, I mean, they're going to ask, when is the Yola Boca Flawed? When are we doing this? Like that becomes something that they look forward to. It's not grandiose. It's not, this massive thing, but there's, and I myself, I look forward to it. It
Mhm.
becomes something that you value. It's that shared family experience. Why do we do this YOLO Boca Flawed? We do this because our family spends Christmas on the road to see the other family. Like my mom is, getting close to 80. It's been years since she's been able to travel. We'll always go back, see the grandparents, see the family that we won't be able to see. So this is why we do this. We do this for us. We do this as part of our tradition. So, again, just encouraging families out there to think creative. And if you've never done anything, start small.
Mhm.
Don't go all in. It's not about spending the money. It's about that family coming together because God has made something precious in that family. And traditions can also, again, if your family struggles to spend time together, it's a great chance to learn. So,
Absolutely.
well, thank you both for the conversation. Thank you for Stacy for being on the episode once again. You can find our podcast, Virtuous Roots, on all the major streaming platforms. And until next time, God bless.